Okay, so thank you everyone again for joining in this ASG webinar series. Today we're joining Iago Junqueira. Please correct me if I'm not pronouncing correctly your name. He's a veterinarian and he's going to talk to us about an amazing and novel theme in amphibian health and the important roles veterinarians play in amphibians. So, in amphibian conservation. So, feel free to ask your questions on the chat box, and we're going to ask Iago at the end. So, thank you very much. Iago, this is all yours.
Thank you, Maria. And hi, everyone. I hope you can understand me fine. And if you guys have any kind of trouble with the sound or my sound especially, please let me know so we can like repeat something that you might have missed. So I'll present myself first, and I'll thank ASG from IUCN to invite me over to give this lecture. My name is Iago Junqueira. I am from Brazil. I am a graduated veterinarian, and I am a specialized veterinarian in wildlife and zoo medicine. I've done my residency in São Paulo Zoo, which is where I've started to get like more closely and related to and put my hands on in the amphibians. And I mean, learning about amphibians just blew my mind because there is so many things we don't know about their anatomy, physiology, how we can apply veterinary medicine to it. And there is still so much place for growing and for discoveries that this challenging of I mean having a patient that is an amphibian brought me to a place where I decided to dedicate a lot of my career into exploring this field of amphibian medicine and trying to do my best for them. Learning how endangered the amphibians are these days makes my heart go so like sad, and but at the same time it makes me want to take action, and taking action is what most of people that work the ASGs all over the world are doing for amphibians now these days. So for this lecture we're going to talk a little bit about how a veterinarian can work with amphibians, how amphibians need vets, and how we can try to at least try to change a little bit of this scenario. Okay. Talking a little bit more about me and my background. After I finished my residency on the zoo, I've worked on a rehab center, and then eventually I transitioned into becoming a professor. In this day, I am a professor full time, and I work at the Wild Place, which is a business nowadays that I teach courses, and one of the things we try to do is that we try to educate people not only in the veterinarian fields about the different conservation initiatives that they can be part of, but also try to teach them about the importance of them being involved with conservation and how can a veterinarian and conservation find common ground and help each other. So if you guys are interested in any of that, you can look it up later. In my final slide, I'll have like a, the ads of our social media and also my contact. So feel free to reach out. Okay. So the team that I decided to talk to you all of you today is the amphibian vet, the urge for veterinarian professionals these days that take care of amphibians. We are facing like very big challenges when we are talking about amphibian conservations. And some of these challenges can have and must have the aid of veterinarians to be solved. So um, when we talk about, let me see if it will work. Yeah. When we talk about frogs being sick, it's not like any kind of secret that frogs, as any kind of living being, can get sick. Frogs get sick all the time. There are frogs that get sick because they've been involved into an accident. They've tried to, I mean, they're prey. So especially when we're talking about domestic animals, there are accidents involving dogs and frogs, cats and frogs, frogs and people. So frogs can get hurt, but the same way frogs can get diseases. This is one of the cases I've had. This is a a very endangered frog from South America, and it lives in an island. So the distribution of this species is very small. It's called Synex alcatraz, or the alcatraz frog froglet, because it's very tiny. And sometimes we people that work in conservation, we might have this kind of endangered species being brought for our care in a zoo, for example, or a conservation center. We try to do our best to get the health of these frogs as best as possible during their stay with us. But frogs, they age. Frogs, they get themselves in trouble too when they are in a confined space. And aging, or just being prone to different sorts of affections, might bring them to the vet. This one is a very old frog, and he had liver disease. And with this liver disease, corneal lipidosis started to develop. So we had to address this very tiny little animal that, I mean, it looks small in the top, like in the points of my fingers. These are my fingers and the gloves around them. So we have not only the challenge of getting the patient that is so small. Sometimes they're big, but most of the time they're very small. And also dealing with a patient with a complete different anatomy and physiology. So when we have a frog in the vet, if the vet is not prepared to deal with that kind of species, it could be a history that goes even worse to the frog when they're brought into the vet. Because if we don't know what we're doing, the veterinarian will make several mistakes. Most people, most vets, they think that when we are approaching a frog, it's just like we're approaching a reptile, bringing a reptile into the clinic. And that's not even close. Reptiles, they have so many different characteristics, although there are also ectothermals and all of that. But the frogs are so specific. They have so many different little details and little things that we have to know to give them a better healthcare, that just comparing them to reptiles and using reptiles as a reference is not enough, and will lead you to mistakes, and will lead you to take like a wrong approach to frogs, maybe risking the frog's life. So that's why we have, as veterinarians, to learn how to take care of these frogs. Most of the time, here in Brazil at least, and now some other countries too, just like Colombia, when we have a frog in the vet, they try to call me. So I've been receiving like messages from SOS Frogs or SOS Iago every day. People calling me like, "What do I do? I now have this frog that has like injured leg, or had this skin disease, or is just not feeling well. What do we do? You know?" And I try my best to help everybody, but as we were like spreading the word and people were like knowing that I've been working with frogs for a while, this just got like very overwhelming, because now it's like 15, 20 different people messaging me, and I'm not keeping track of all those patients because it's too much people, too many frogs. How can I myself try to handle all of this, you know? So what I decided to do is that I can't take this responsibility to myself and help all those people, but I can try to teach those people how to think like I do when I'm taking care of frogs, so they can get independent as frog veterinarians, knowing at least the basics to get that frog decent healthcare and try to help it recover. And if they are failing at it, because I mean, depending on what case we're talking about, they can also try to reach me out again, and we can discuss like a more advanced topics on the on frog medicine. But most of the cases are simple cases, so teaching at least the basics are already helping frogs all over the world. All right, so when I talk to students, most of my lectures are for students on the undergrad level. That's a question. Like when they see that they're gonna learn about frogs, they ask like, why would I ever want to learn about frogs? And I have multiple topics I could bring about like why a vet should learn about frogs, but here I have at least four. We have this first topic as frog production. So people eat frogs all over the world, especially in some countries, like especially if they're colonized by France, because frog legs are a very special French dish. And we cannot turn out that this is a reality there, people eating frogs. And but we care about these frogs' health too. I mean, even they're in like in a production farm, like a frog farm, they should be well taken care. They should at least have been given like the decent welfare that we also now are seeing to increase with cows or with pigs or whatever other production animal we have. So how do we do it? How do we adjust like frog production to be very productive? How do we provide these animals with at least the basics of the welfare? How do we contain and prevent disease within these animals, especially because, I mean, most places are crowded like this in the pictures? How do we plan on biosecurity and this, like the wasting disposal after like all these frogs have been using this water and the food and whatever comes out of this production facility? How do we dispose these materials? It's all part of very well structured veterinary planning, that if the veterinarian doesn't know about frogs health, frog anatomy, physiology, frogs diseases, and at least a little bit about biosecurity, this person in itself, this vet, will fail to take care of these frogs. And him failing might lead to other problems in the ecosystem too, especially with the disposals of this kind of production. Secondly, we have frogs like this. This is a Pac-Man frog, which has been very popular in Brazil these days, and people are buying frogs as pets. If you guys ask me my position, this is me, okay, talking. I don't like frogs as pets because what the comparison I do is that people have a hard time raising a guinea pig. People do wrong things caring for dogs. And when comes like a frog in the place, I mean, it's just so hard to take care of frogs because there's so many other aspects, especially environmental aspects, that we have to take control, such as temperature, humidity, different kinds of like um, substrates, and the food itself is hard to get. And I mean, it's just not practical to raise a frog. So I know that there is people that do a good frog care, and I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about like these people that will have a frog because they thought they were cute on social media, and now they want a frog to put like clothes on them, hats on them, and make material for social media content. Um, that's not like how a frog should be approached. That's not how a frog should be handled. That's not how a frog should be treated. And that's not the reason why people should want to have a frog. Just like people shouldn't want to have a lot of animals that eventually they end up getting. But these frogs, just like I said, I mean, people don't know how to take care of their guinea pigs. Keep that in mind. These frogs, when they get into these people houses, they will get sick. They will get sick because they are getting the wrong handling, they're getting the wrong management, getting the wrong environment, And if there's not a vet that knows how to care for this frog's health, where does this people should take this frog to? I mean, it's I mean, we have to get these veterinarians in clinics ready for it too. How can we like allow people to buy these animals if they don't get the support they need afterwards? So, although I'm not very fond of frogs being pets, I know that's gonna happen, and I know that's gonna be everywhere, and I know it's a growing market. So I want to help these frogs also to get a better healthcare, and I think they should. And every time I have invitations from different clinics that care for wildlife or for uh, exotic pets, I go to them and I try to train them the best I can for them to give a better healthcare for these frogs that might ended up getting sick too. And just to let you know, I know that there's some people that will take good care of frogs, and I'm not condemning them if they're doing things legally. So if you can get a frog legally and you want to have a frog, and please take good care of them and make sure you have a vet that knows what they're doing when they're receiving frogs too. Third thing, there's a lot of places like zoos and conservation places or even rehab centers that might receive frogs. They might keep frogs too. And all those places have veterinarians to take care of the animals they are hosted there. And these people, if they will ever receive a frog for them to take care, they have to know what they're doing. And then finally, we have this last picture with the beautiful golden frog. It's like golden helmeted frog from Brazil, which is a very endangered species, also very endemic. There's not many of these animals. I mean, there are less of 100 of them, as we know, and they being kept in conservation places for ex situ management, but also there are people studying these animals in the wild, just like there are a lot of people studying different kind of species, especially the endangered ones, and they're in the wild, in situ. These species might be sick, or they might be uh, being put through challenges in their environment, such as like pollution or diseasing, spreading, and all of that. How do a veterinarian take care of animals that are in the wild? How can we take preventative medicine into the in situ median? How can we do things for these animals in the wild before the situation that's like making these frogs get their populations decreasing all the time to get into a point where we can control it? So there's a lot of kinds of challenges we can be put through as veterinarians in a production scenario, in a clinical scenario, in a conservation scenario, even though it's ex situ or in situ. So, why a vet should learn about it? To give a better care for animals. That's why we have become veterinarians. As a vet, we can take care of like any living being, not humans, but in a certain way, even though we're now like practicing clinics into human medicine, we ended up saving humans too. So that's why we should learn about frogs because the frogs need us. When we talk about frogs, especially amongst all animals, there's been a lot of extinction waves and also the spread of diseases. Frogs are facing very tough challenges in the wild in the last 50 years. I don't know if you're aware of it. Most of you all that are here are aware of it if you're already working with frogs, but frogs have been through a pandemics over 50 years. We need to act. How do we act? So I'll talk you through a little bit of the amphibians case, just in case you're not aware of what's going on with all this pandemic situation of frogs. If you know it, just like hang through it because I'll talk to people that doesn't know what's going on. Okay. So the amphibians case, we're talking about an example of this sort of situation, but it's a real example, okay? So picture the 70s in Central America, as a lot of countries are still um, colonies of European countries, and Central America has been like even more popularized as a touristic destination. Also, this colonial countries, they look out at the opportunity for them having like a tropical land overseas to try to increase the production of grains and meat and all kinds of uh, extractivism to get it back to their countries in Europe. So the commerce in there, the touristical infrastructure increases. And with that comes the idea of like, we're dealing with a tropical place. We should try to raise frogs to feed up like the need of frog meat in Europe. That's the best place to raise it because I mean the climate is good. We don't have to think about like things such as the temperature and the humidity, which are both like very important for raising frogs, for example. Which if we do that in Europe can be very challenging because of winter, right? So more restaurants, French influence, all of that, that lead to the rainy cultures to increase their production. So there's new rainy culture focus and farms all spread around like Central America. And I am trying to do this example kind of like in a non-specific way. I'm not mentioning countries and populations and species of frogs that have been affected, but I am simplifying it as Central America, okay? But this kind of thing also happened in different places all over the world. So, which frog should we use? Central America frogs, although there are big frogs in there, most of the frogs are very small, not suited for eating. But you know, one species that is the bullfrogs. But the bullfrogs are not from Central America, so they got brought up into Central America for the meat production. The bullfrogs, so far, as non native frogs, uh, they adapted very well to the climate in Central America. By the way, at the same time, before the bullfrogs get into Central America, you can see in the bottom that the native frogs are not worried at all. They're in the jungle doing their frog things. But when the bullfrogs got imported, there's some climate events and also some fails on biosecurity measures that took the bullfrogs into the Caribbean ecosystem and the Caribbean jungle. So the bullfrog is now an invasive species in there, has been introduced. That made the native frogs worried. But there's worse things. The bullfrogs, they're asymptomatic to a very contagious and lethal fungus that no one's know about that in the 70s, okay? Also, they are highly competitive with other amphibians. They not only eat the food that the amphibians, like the native frogs, would eat, but they also eat other frogs. Not many people care about frogs ecosystem. There's not the understanding of like how an ecosystem works. People in the 70s were still figuring it out. Most of them will be like, if your frogs are dying, why don't we pick some other frogs somewhere else and put them in a place? So native frogs got very much worried because there's a lot of things going on, and these bullfrogs that have been introduced, they are not fair competition at all. People don't know about frog diseases. People don't know about frog medicine, amphibian medicine at all. So those frogs, they're not very much worried, but they got duped. These frogs are like, what are we going to do? Because I mean, there's a lot of things going on. Just so you know, the worst thing about it, all of this in here, is that fungus. That fungus is the BD or Batrachochytrium dendrobatidis. The BD is also known as chytrid fungus. It's a fungus that, so far in the 70s, haven't caused trouble to any other living being. So they were not considered a threat. So when they were being identified in the frog's skin, as it had never caused disease anywhere else to any other living being, it's, I mean, not given the importance that it actually had. But the thing is, what this fungus do is that it has a mobile phase and a non-mobile phase. And when they're in the mobile phase, they can swim, and whenever there is like a little, at least a little bit of humidity and in the water stream, until they find something that has keratin on it, just like the frog's skin. And when they find the keratin as their keratin trophic, they install themselves in the keratin and they make their non non non-moving uh, spore into their skin. I'm looking for the words in English because I mean I've never done this lecture in English before, but I'm trying to do a good job. If you don't understand, just ask me later, okay? But then when they get into their non-mobile uh, phase in this frog's skin, it's starting it starts to grow. And as it grows, it at some point they will rupture the frog skin cell and they will liberate other moving phases into the wild. Those moving phases can reinfect those frogs and cause like a huge part of the skin of the frog to be infected and had their keratin being eaten. So the response of the frogs to it is they're like, okay, so my keratin is being damaged. I'll make a new layer because they can do this ecdysis or they can change their skin. But that keratin, as it's being like colonized by this fungus, the fungus prevents the frogs to liberating the old skin. So that old skin get trapped within the new one. And then the frogs start doing like even more changes of skin. And that skin that's not being shed, it gets thick. When that gets thick, the frog start having problems because the frog needs the skin to breathe through their skin, although they have lungs. A huge part of their gas exchange happens through their skin. Also, the frogs don't drink water through their mouths. They absorb water through their skin, as well as they release a lot of the waste compounds they produce in their metabolism through the skin also. Some frogs can even spread ammonia through their skin instead of having it to be turned into urea and then go through kidney filtration and then for them to eliminate and then it in their urine. So these frogs that have trouble with their skin now, they can't do either of those things. And that causes them a lot of stress. Stress because they're being deprived of oxygen and deprived of osmolarity regulation. When that happens, the frog immune system drops because of that constant stress. Bacteria can grow on the dead skin that's in around the frog. The sum of bacteria and fungal disease in the skin causes a lot of inflammation, and that, if the frog is not treated, can reach the bloodstream and the frog gets sepsis. Eventually, the frog dies. What was going on in there is that these bullfrogs, they were eating the native frogs. They're competing with the native frogs. This fungus is spreading non-stopping through the ecosystem, and frogs are dying or either eaten or either thin or either sick. You know what happened? It took us 20 years. to understand how the chytrid fungus really worked. And that decimates the Central American frogs up to like 70% of the amphibian species got extinct in 20 years. Some scientists say that that's the biggest extinction wave ever registered for any kind of vertebrate species somewhere in the world in such a short amount of time. That's very concerning because now we have 70% of the amphibian species extinct in the wild. Extinct. They are not there. We can't do much. Maybe species that we didn't even know that existed got extinct before we find them. So people started to try to take action. Just places like Panama, Costa Rica, and other countries in South America. When they saw that, some species got saved, but they've been transported to places for conservation purposes where they've been kept up to this date. And although now we know a lot about them, and now we know how to reproduce them in an ex situ environment, we are not sure if we can release them back because the disease might be there still. And how we control that? We're talking about a disease in an animal. Who cares for animals when they're sick? Veterinarians. Why are we not caring for frogs? That's a very good question, right? So, you know what happened as a result of it? I mean, not directly. I know that this has not link, but no link with what I'm going to say. But I mean, you can try to think of it by yourself. You don't have to be a mathematician to do the summing. But look at that. Between the 80s and 2017, this is the increase of dengue cases in Central America. Frogs are involved into eating these arthropods, just like many of the arthropods that can carry disease. Do you think that a massive extinction wave in Central America of these predators for these arthropods could be linked to their boom and the spread of disease? Of course it can. I mean, just like uh, also a lot of causes, just like cities getting bigger, not enough um, sanitary care for for the people in the cities, and all of that is involved also. I mean, political troubles and people having difficult access into uh, preventing these diseases also. But I mean, not having the frogs will probably have an influence in this too. So it looks like it's a good idea to save frogs, right? Not only frogs, but it's a good idea also to understand how this kind of uh, problem within the animals can lead to a problem within the ecosystem. And that eventually will come back and bite us in the butt and cause problem for human beings too. All right. So veterinarians can be a key professional in this. When we talk about conservation itself, we lead to a conversation that conservation is a transdisciplinary matter. We have to think as a conservationist, how can society uses their resources wisely so we can conservate the environment and the animals that live in there without depriving the society of what they need? We have to think about the ecosystems and how to minimize the environmental and climate impacts, both caused by humans, but that can be caused also by animals, especially when they're introduced, they're invasive species, for example. And we also have to think about the living beings in there, not just the animals itself, but also the plants and every other organism that's in that ecosystem. And how does this live being impacts in the ecosystem he's inserted into? And how can the absence of it or the excess of it cause troubles to the ecosystem and to society somehow? So, to do that, we do an action plan. And action plan are made by different kind of people, just like biologists and veterinarians, but also government people and lawyers, people working with uh, sustainability and engineers and all kinds of people you can think of, possibly that might be involved into these niches. And together, as a transdisciplinary matter, we create these action plans. But if you are a veterinarian or a biologist, you might have seen this sort of scheme before because that's the same approach as we see in healthcare these days. So we have in healthcare to think about human health, how human health has been impacted, and how it has been impacted, especially when we change the ecosystem that we're living in. We forget we are part of nature somehow. We also have to think about the ecosystem health. If an ecosystem is sick, how can a deficient functional ecosystem uh, causes trouble into human health for the live beings that are inserted into it, and also the animal health. How can animal health, if it's from one species of multiple species, can affect the whole ecosystem and somehow the human health too? That's exactly the example I was giving about the frogs. The frogs in itself are sick. The frogs being sick, they cause trouble to the whole ecosystem because the ecosystem is now unregulated. I mean, it's not balanced. And somehow that translates into human health because problems that have been developed into the ecosystem can result in trouble for humans too. When we think about health, we could try to use the word balance instead. When a person is sick, is that something is unbalanced in there. If you don't eat well, you might get sick because you might be needing some sort of nutrient. Or if you get an infection, what the infection causes is it unbalances some sort of tissue in your body. And now you have to try to recover from that to reinstallate that balance. The same thing happens to animals. But when we think about the ecosystem in itself, that's like the whole combination of different organisms living together. If one animal into that ecosystem got removed from that ecosystem, now that ecosystem is sick because it's unbalanced. So the whole environment can be sick and just because of the lack of balance that's been put in there. How do we fix it? If the animal got extinct, how can we fix that void place that's been left in there? Because that's the animal's purpose in that niche to do that job that maintains the whole balance in that ecosystem. And if that balance has been like destroyed and now other animals are being affected about because of it, or other plants or other living beings are being affected of that, that void can get even bigger and bigger, and we have a bigger ecosystem health problem. And however big it is, it might affect other animals and eventually human health in such a big impact as it's been affecting the ecosystem health itself. That's why we call this trio a one health approach. And that's how we should approach health now one. That's what been thought for veterinarians um, for a long time now and should be kept like being taught not only to veterinarians, but to all human beings, so we can understand that everything's connected. Our health depends on the ecosystem health, and the ecosystem health depends on the health of the living beings that are in there. And how it all like will translate into we need to keep our animals healthy. Who keeps the animals healthy? The veterinarians. That's why we have a key role into all of the One Health approach balance. So, how are frogs being affected by it, right? I mean, how we can link health and conservation medicine itself when we're talking about frogs. So we already know that frogs are might be endangered because of the diseases, but they might be endangered also because of threats to the habitat quality, pollution. It's not enough to have a stream of water passing through a place. That stream of water might have has to have the right conditions to the survival of the species there inhabit that place. So if we change the pH, if we add some chemical compounds, and or if we add soap or something that disturbs that environment, although the stream is still in there, the stream of water is still in there, it doesn't mean it has the quality to support animals living in there. And therefore, those animals might be endangered because although the stream of water is in there, it's now compromised. And when I say the stream of water, you can substitute that for air quality. You can substitute that for uh, noise pollution or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds that an habitat can lose its quality. There's also the impact of climate change. The climate change is being so fast that animals and the ecosystems might not be following the same adaptation wave they should. So if we change the climate too quickly, animals and ecosystems might not have the time to adapt to the new ecosystem and might be affected by it really badly. And also there's the results of this climate change, such as like wildfires we've seen in United States and also in Brazil and in all different parts of the world, that could be a result of incidental wildfire. It could be made by people, but somehow it might be related also to climate change. And I mean, that's just an example. We have anthropic action. Anthropic action is um, it could have different approaches, but one that I'll give an example is agriculture. When we have like a monoculture, just like we do all over Brazil and a lot of countries do in their countries too, we create very isolated islands of ecosystems that can support life. And most of those islands are surrounded by this monoculture of like crops that we need for ourselves as humans. But what we're doing is that we are segregating these populations. We're giving them less space for them to live, but we're also making it harder for them to survive because now they're far apart from each other. Just like one example of entropic action that's being bad and posing a threat to amphibians in itself. A frog might not be able to cross that cropping site to another place where the other frogs lives to try to keep their genetic diversity going on and their breeding. Especially if they're like migratory, they don't have a path to migrate anymore because they got trapped in this desert of agriculture, monoculture that takes a lot of place between the environments where it's supposed to live. Also, the expansion of human problems, not only the pandemics, but also animal production problems, economical problems, wars, as we've seen these days, that all leads to economical reflexes into the society that makes the society less aware of conservation. We take the focus out of what the animals need because these people, they are there fighting for their lives. They are not concerned about if a frog is endangered or not. And the shift of the perspective and the shift of focus can be very hard on these animals because uh, their threats are still there. And we if we take their spotlight out because of different problems we might have, the problem for them are still there, are still true, and they still need that help we were giving them. But now we have other concerns and how we handle all this without lacking the help they need. So there's a lot of challenges that's being posed into the amphibian conservation, and not only the amphibian conservation, but all environmental conservation in itself. As a resume of all of this, I've said to have a balanced ecosystem, that means an ecosystem that is healthy, we need a conservation action. To have a balanced and healthy ecosystem, we need we try to provide lesser impacts into their living beings. And to do that, we also need conservation action. So conservation is just like the whole mean of all of this, because I mean, that's going to be the focus to help not only us living to live better, but also the animals and the frogs that we're trying to reach. Who is involved with it though? There are biologists, mostly biologists, but there's also veterinarians, environmental educators, the vet techs, universities, researchers, microbiologists, all kinds of scientists working together to try to make conservation medicine work. But veterinarians, they are a highlight in there because they understand how the animal works, they understand how healthcare works, and they understand, I mean, we wish they understand more how the ecosystem health works too. So they can try to bring it all together and have a bigger and wider approach to know what they're doing in order to try to save in a whole ecosystem or in species that it's endangered in there, because are willing to try all our efforts to get that species or that ecosystem, that biome out of threat. Um, that's why we have this broader view. We are linked into so many aspects that intertwine into the conservation in itself, that we need more veterinarians working with conservation and doing conservation medicine because of those purposes. But there are not enough vets doing it, and that's bad. That's our challenge. All right, so now that you know what the conservation medicine is, what poses threats into the amphibians, and kind of like how and who does conservation medicine in itself, I'll tell you a little bit about what I am doing on trying to cover all those aspects. Just as an example, I am trying to be involved in as many conservation efforts as I can. So I've been involved into conservation action, and I mean in situ evaluations, ex situ animal care. I've written chapters and books. It's not the book I've written, chapter 4, but the Fowler Zoo and Wild Animal Medicine are one of like our Bibles when it's regarding zoo and wild animal care. And they are now on writing their 11th version, their 11th volume, and they've invited me for this next chapter that's going to be published, I think still this year or early next year. And I try to put there everything I know about the amphibians they asked me to write about. So we're also doing that for our version of the Fowler, but here in Brazil we call it the Cubas. And There, I've written everything I know about amphibian medicine that you can possibly think of, just to try, I mean, indirectly influence and give the knife and the fork into the hands of veterinarians that might be researching for the methods in itself and how to care for these animals, and they're not finding their research. They're not finding these references. We're trying to put these references out there. What I do also is that I do courses. Now, I mean, most of my time I've dedicated teaching and trying to raise the awareness of it. I mean, just like I am doing right here. So I've been to universities. I can be into a clinic. I can be into a postgrad course. I can do a course for a certain group, all in order to try to get all those knowledge I've been gathering all along the years and the experience I've been gathering along the years, and try to give them into the veterinarian that was gonna be taking care of frogs just like I am, because I can't do it that myself. I can't save all the frogs, and I can't save all frogs, especially all around the world and all the problems they might be facing, even though it's like a chytrid fungus problem or different kind of pandemics that they've been through as well, like ranavirus. Ranavirus is another one that's been concerning Brazil a lot because I mean we've been getting like more cases and more cases, and they're all sporadic. We can't track where they're coming from, and the frogs are suffering from it. And differently than the chytrid fungus, chytrid fungus, if we take those frogs and we treat them, we can try to get the animal to recover. But from ranavirus, we don't know what to do. We just take the frogs out of their misery. So there's still a lot of challenges. Now I'm part of the ASG. So I've been part of the ASG for uh, over a year now, and I am a training coordinator for them. And what I do is that in there, uh, I opinate in most of the topics they try to discuss about, but I try to bring a veterinarian and a wide uh, ecosystem, One Health approach to the decision making, because we need it and we don't have enough of it. We need more vets involved in this matters. We need more veterinarians in ASGs, regional ASGs, and the global ASG all around the world. Just not that the biologists don't do a good job of it, because they're also a very important piece of it, and they do have sometimes look into the ecosystem health much better than we do. But we are trained on health, and they are trained on living beings. And sometimes veterinarians and biologists they overshadow each other, but there are things that only biologists can do and only veterinarians can do, and care for the animal's health is something that, although the biologist is always involved, a veterinarian is the responsible for. And as a group of animals such as the amphibians, which are nowadays one of the most endangered vertebrate groups around the world, if we're not involved on on their conservation, mainly because most of these amphibians are endangered also because of diseases, what are we doing? You know, I mean, we have to be involved with it. We have to understand the problem and try to take action against the problem. My take of action is now preparing people to deal with the sick amphibians. That way, I can use the knowledge I have to lead other people to take action just like I am doing, because I can't take action for all of them. So far, we've done trainings in Brazil, mainly in Brazil, all over the country and all of the regions, most of the Brazilian states. We've reached Colombia and also the United States, and I've given the course on amphibian medicine for over 1,000 students in the last 5 years. So it's been a long job, a lot of students being reached. But guess what? There's still not enough vets doing it. So being given the platform here at the ASG global. I'm reaching out to all the people around the world that might be watching this lecture that I can try to help you, you know? Let me help you try to get like your vets better prepared for the amphibian health response. And in doing that, I hope that those vets can help and prepare other people, and that can keep a massive growing learning curve all over the world. So that's our way to try to spread the word of amphibian medicine, the need for new veterinarians, and try to get new veterinarians involved with it. So that's my goal. I hope I brought here in this lecture the importance of the veterinarian in the field and how we can help and how the frogs need us. The frogs can't speak for themselves. So I'll be here uh, telling you for our frogs. I'm trying to be the voice for them on we need veterinarians and there is an urge and we need you guys learning it and being involved with it like now, you know? So we need to reach a broader audience. We need to qualify more people to do it. So we need new veterinarians being involved with it. And if you're a veterinarian, you're watching this, or if you're a student, and you feel like you heard the call of the amphibians now needing you to care for their health, you can try to reach out also to learn more about the amphibians, and I'll be gladly ready for helping you to try to reach your goal and learning more about amphibian health, like an applied amphibian health, for you to take better care of your amphibians too. So, do you want to help? Um, Try to find learning opportunities. There's a lot of learning opportunities. There's a lot of material. There's a lot of research being done. Not enough, but there's still a lot of opportunities. Another thing is that don't do it if you don't know how to do it, because you can cause more problems than help the animals. And when I say that, I mean from basic things that you might not be aware of, such as using gloves. If you're a biologist or if you're a veterinarian and you care for amphibians, you're not using gloves, that's a serious thing because you know what? The amphibian's skin has a microbiome for bacteria. And our skin also have a different microbiome, but also we have a lot of chemical compounds we add to it every day. And we add that intentionally, just like we apply sunscreen, we apply alcohol to disinfect our hands. We use shampoo and soap and all of that. And residuals will always be in your hand, no matter how many times you wash it. I know that some biologists will say, I wash my hands. If you also, not if you wash your hands, but not enough, not only the compounds will be there, but you may also sweat. And sweat has a lot of salt that reaching the skin of the frog when you handle it without the gloves will disturb those bacteria. That bacteria that's been in a balance in the amphibian skin will suffer from any kind of chemicals or from any sort of elements, just like the ones on your sweat in your hand when you touch it. And you might not see the result immediately. So you say, like, oh, I've been working with amphibians for like 20 years and I always handle them in the wild without our gloves. And I've never seen anything happen. But you know what? If you keep track of that amphibian in the next 3 or 4 days, the stress we caused, plus the handling, plus the microbiome disturbance, might lead to disease. And you're not even gonna know because the animal will have that in the next couple of days, and you might cause trouble, and you will never know. But if you work in an ex situ and you do that, sometimes you might have like an sporadic case of red leg disease and you don't know where it come from. Maybe it come from your handling. So be aware of that. And that's why if you don't know how to do it, don't do it. Learn how to do it first and then you do it. Because I mean, there's a lot of little mistakes that we've been, I mean, compulsively doing all over the years, and that's being spread all over that, I mean, might cause more trouble than help when we are trying to help these animals. Ask for help. And if you have a success case, share it. Share it like there's like if there was like those megaphones, share it on that megaphone. Try to find a platform to spread that word and let us know what's been learned in your learning curve too. Because when we sum up all these learning curves from different people and we get together to share our discoveries, that's how the amphibian medicine or that science, amphibian medicine as a science, also grows. Find your network, engage with those groups, share what you know, and try to potentialize the learning yourself, being a new voiceover for the amphibian health for other people. We need you and we want you. So if you're a vet, you're hearing this call, please learn more about amphibians. And if you already know a lot, keep doing what you're doing because you're very important for this class of animals. Okay. Um, this is my lecture for today, and I appreciate the opportunity of being here. I mean, it's been amazing to be able to, reach this place and try to get my voice heard for different places around the globe. And reach out because I want to help you to help amphibians. So I want to help you to learn more about these animals and do more to try to fix all this chit chat and all these things that have been going on with this class of animals because I mean they do need our help. Here's some of the links on the social media you can try to look for. The Wild Place BR is my business. That's where I teach my courses. That's where you can try to reach out to maybe schedule a training for veterinarians, whatever you are. So we can try to do that online. We can try to do that in person. Reach out and we will find the logistics on how to do it. Okay, on asg.brazil, you will find out the whole network we have here in Brazil. We're also trying to connect people, biologists or veterinarians or whoever are trying to do their best for amphibian conservation purposes. And you will find it like a whole team in there with different activities and different research, all working in a transdisciplinary way to try to get conservation efforts for amphibians in our country out there. We always try to engage with the ASG global too, so you'll hear a lot about us in the future. And there's also uh, my personal social media at that Iago Junqueira. You can follow me there. And if you want to message me and in the inbox and ask me questions in there too and try to find the SOS Iago, please help me. That's a place to do it. You can also email me. I just left my email here too. It's Iago_Junqueira@hotmail.com. I am at your service. I am at the service of the frogs, and I appreciate the opportunity of sharing it all. And if you have questions, now's the time. Maria, are you there?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much, Yaro. It was amazing. So I don't know, does anyone have a question or anything that would like to say to Yago? Feel free to raise your hand or write it
Yeah.
down in the at the chat.
So I see some chats here. Dan, a Spanish vet in Singapore, would love to reach out so we can help and contribute. Of course, let's make that connection. I mean, we're here in Brazil, are ready for that connection too. And I mean, whenever and however we can help you guys and you guys can help us. I mean, that's always a good trade. As I as I told you guys, I mean, networking will be a key for us to evolving the amphibian medicine science. So, I mean, please feel free to reach out. And there's another message. Let's see. Gracias, Iago in Bolivia. Hay muy pocos veterinarios de vida silvestre. Yo soy bióloga. Con los vets que conozco nos ayudamos mutuamente en algunos casos. Y uso luvas para tocar los anfibios. Perfecto, Daniela. Mucho gusto en tenerla aquí. Y si necesita alguna cosa también, así que hablo español, podemos hacer algún entrenamiento con tus veterinarios o cualquier cosa que necesite ayuda. Pueden me encontrar en mis social medias también. Estaré allá para ayudarlos como pudiera. ¿Está bien? Muchas gracias. And thank you so much, Maria and Amael and everybody that's involved in here. Um, I really enjoyed this, and I hope we can keep this veterinarian urge decreasing as we get more veterinarians working with amphibians in the future.
Yes, definitely. So thank you. A lot of
You,
thank yous over there. Amael has a question.
there was a hand up from Karina Rodriguez on the. It's gone now. Just wanted to notice that one.
Okay.
But
Karina, was that it?
Yeah,
but
Karina.
maybe
Yeah,
not
feel free,
then.
guys, to speak.
Well, I do have a question as well, if it's possible. So you're working with a lot of different people, but do you have some direct experience with people who are only conservationists, not part of any research, any ecological background or biological background? People are working in the field, implementing conservation practices, but don't have the scientific background. And how did that work out if you have that experience?
So let me get your question again. So you're asking if people working in the fields with conservation initiatives, if they don't have what? Sorry.
If they are today without, let's say research or university background,
Uh-huh.
but people who are implementing conservation, people who are recipient of information, and the type of people who is really making a difference for conservation, not just researching it. Do you have you worked with people like this, and how did it work out?
Yeah, I've did work with them, and actually you might be aware of Cibele and here in Brazil. And I mean she's the one that's like taking the lead of our ASG group, and she manages a lot of conservation efforts going on around Brazil. I've been involved in the programs of conservation for the golden helmeted frog, and now I'm involved also with the conservation of the, we call it the zombie frog, the Dendropsulphus necronastus. So what my experience with that is that whenever they need my help as a veterinarian, I try to reach out for them and try to follow them into the wild when we need. We collect the samples, we train people in the jungle and in the fields also for collecting samples for future research in amphibian health and preventive medicine, just like monitoring if the disease is there and all of that. We have a very good connection with Professor Toledo, and also that's the one that does most of the PCRs for different kind of diseases here in Brazil. So he's always instructing us too, and I'm trying to be like an advocate for them in the field, is going in there and trying to reach out for these people and ask them, do they need help? How can I help? Being ready for them, helping them in there and getting other people ready for doing it too. So recently in April, I've always also been to Northeast Brazil and Fortaleza, doing a course for NUROF, they call this, like a nucleus for reptiles and amphibians, and their studies with reptiles and amphibians. And we just found out that they possibly have a rhinovirus outbreak, just like within the course. As I was teaching them, some of the animals we've gathered to do the course in itself had the clinical signs for it. So, I mean, as we are trying to reach out these places and get people ready, we eventually also get involved with an outbreak that we don't even know. So now we're studying it to see if it is the case or not. So for rhinovirus. So I mean, that's how I've been involved. I don't know if I answer your question.
Yes, yes,
But
you did. Thank you very much. It's perfect. Thank you.
yeah. So does anyone else have another question? Let me see. Let me see. Oh, there's people from Bolivia, Australia. Thank you guys for listening. I hope my English was good and understandable. And I can't wait to for you guys to reach out. I hope you don't need my help, but if you do, please let me know, and I mean I'll be ready to try to help it. Okay?
And so thank you so much, Iago. Um, you can follow him, contact him, or if you need something else, you can contact us so we can give you Iago's contact. And well, thank you very much for this. I think that there are no more questions. And
Right.
yeah, so thank you very much. We can just finish this webinar series and this webinar for today. And thank you very much, Iago.
All right. Thank you, Maria, so much. Thank you, Mael, again. Thank you, ASG, and a big hug for all of the everyone that is watching us. And bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.